Wait for the administrator to come back up. Hey, did you work on the hum? How's the hum? Should be well. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank y'all for being here today for today's budget work session. Madam Clerk, I call this meeting to order.
Yes, sir. At this time, we'll have a presentation by Administrator Dowse.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson and Augusta Commissioners. In preparation for today's budget work session, I forwarded to each of you several items requested during the initial budget presentation held on Tuesday, October 17th. Budget justification data, which depicts changes in excess of $100,000 for the general fund, the updated demolition listing for environmental services and the Augusta, Georgia Land Bank, and the road paving program as provided by engineering. Please note, during last discussions, I noted that this information could be forwarded to you quarterly. However, after speaking with Dr. Malik, this listing is static and will be used for procurement purposes, which is planned for advertisement by the end of this year. Meaning, while we can add to it in the future, again, this particular listing is static. As previously discussed, in regards to RFP number 23-142 for internal auditing services, bids have been received in excess of $450,000. If you recall, I budgeted from a business standpoint $300,000. However, as stated, early information indicates that my projected budget exceeds this figure. The Finance Department and the Procurement Department are currently in the negotiation phases for this contract to either reduce the scope, the price, or both. Once negotiations conclude, an agenda item will be presented before this body to render a final decision. Concerning the public library, as discussed, their FY24 request was $3.2 million, which is $300,000 more than their FY23 funding level. All other NGOs that were existing within our FY23 budget was also funded at their FY23 level. Even though Augusta processes the payroll for the public library from the appropriation dollars budgeted, similar to the payroll processing practices for the DDA, the Land Bank, and the Canal Authority, this process does not mean that their employees are employees of Augusta, Georgia. As a non-government organization, the public library has its own tax ID number, state retirement plan, state health insurance, and they are governed by a separate board, utilizes separate procurement methods, have their own checking account, and also receives a separate annual audit. As a risk reduction measure to ensure that their debt position does not resurface, it was mutually agreed upon that their payroll costs would be netted against their appropriation. That is currently being practiced to ensure, again, that their debt position does not resurface. While existing NGOs were funded at the FY23 approved funding level, 4 new NGOs were added to the listing. And please note, as I'm stating a non-governmental organization, that is just because they are not part of Augusta, Georgia's government. The first would be Augusta Tomorrow in support of their ACE program, which offers beautification and supplemental services to the downtown area. The Augusta Canal Authority requested funding to, ACE requested funding to extend their current footprint, which was supported in my recommendations. The Augusta Canal Authority requested $300,000 and was recommended at a level of $150,000 for the maintenance of Augusta-owned property as well as continued preservation. Destination Augusta was recommended for funding at $50,000, and this was in support of the commission-directed funding path for festivals and parades. And then junior achievement was recommended for funding by way of the Discovery Center commitment as approved by the commission just a few months ago. All other NGOs were funded at previous FY23 funding levels. Concerning budget justifications for increases or decreases, in addition to the information previously sent to you for the general fund, I have highlighted some of our larger line items to further explain. As we are planning for an upcoming election year with 3 elections currently scheduled, this accounts for more than $1 million in increased spending. The recreation changes, if you note, there's an increase and an offsetting decrease, which is accounted for positions moving from one org key to another, as well as recent reorganization activities. Road Patrol includes the proposed salary increases and the flock maintenance camera needs. And then Charles Webster Detention Center includes the increases in medical, food, and maintenance contracts. Here's a snapshot of our upcoming budget timeline to include a proposed commission work session number 3 on November 15th, if needed, based upon comments received today. That concludes my presentation, and we are open for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Madam Administrator. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 5th, Commissioner Williams.
Yes, can you go back to the, I think the last one. I have a question. I think you said road patrol and flock cameras.
Yes, sir.
How much of that is flock cameras?
Well, the road patrol portion is 1.9. There's an increase of 2.1, so $200,000.
For the flock cameras, and how much are they per year?
Yeah, that exact amount, we would have to get that information back to you.
Because I know it was something about the flock cameras that we have to pay them a certain amount every year.
There is a maintenance cost, yes. And we can get that information to you.
The maintenance cost was what, 30,000 or so, or what have you? You don't remember?
No, sir.
No, sir, I don't.
Okay, but I don't, but I don't remember anybody asking us about flock cameras. And that was just included, so can you get us those numbers with the flock camera? I don't think we mind paying for them at the same time. I think we just need to know how much. Augusta tomorrow, how much was there? How much were they last year?
$0.
And
Well, correction. So Augusta Tomorrow, the ACE program was funded through the DDA. And their appropriation through the DDA would give them $225,000 for FY24.
So now they're over here on our budget for $275,000.
That's correct. Which would make their total allocation $500,000.
Okay, I don't know how the others feel, but I think some of that needs to be cut.
Sure. They are expanding their current footprint. Right now, they service from Broad Street to Reynolds Street, as well as side streets. The expansion would include the current footprint plus Ellis Street and limited services at the Riverwalk to include additional side streets.
Okay, but they went from 200,000 to 500,000?
Yes.
I don't know, that's still something that I think we need to think about. I don't know if Ms. Francine wants to talk about it or not, but Mock Academy, I want to look at their funding with Mock Academy. They only receiving, I think, $220,000, if I'm not mistaken.
No, sir.
How much are they receiving?
70,000.
The total $220,000, with $150,000 going to Diamond Lakes and $70,000 for operations. I
That's what
think
I'm
that's how
saying.
they have it
It's a
listed.
total of 220,000.
Yes.
Okay, Newman is getting 371,000. Can you tell me what's the difference in what they do?
Sure. So Mock Academy does not pay for the maintenance of their facility. Those costs are charged to Parks and Recreation, as well as once Mock Academy receives an appropriation, Augusta does not handle their salaries. So salaries are also included in Newman Tennis Center, in addition to the utilities that Newman has to pay.
Yeah, but I think he's got right at about 100 kids out there that they not only teach them how to play tennis, they got a program where kids are in the school and, you know, trying to help kids keep up with their grades and getting in college and what have you. I'd like to see them go to about 300,000.
Okay.
That's just my want or need, or I'm not sure who's going to agree with me, but I just think they do so much for the community that would help them continue to help kids go to school, and he's been doing that a long time, and I think they deserve the funding. I'm not going to take up too much time, Mr. Mayor, but I got a couple of questions.
Come on with them.
We got, explain to me, you got RCCI funding. What about the cemetery costs with RCCI this year? Do we have money over there, or where are we pulling money from to give them extra money?
Are you speaking in reference to the salaries?
Just RCCI, we gave them more funding for cemeteries, correct?
I think so.
Director Williams,
The increases for RCCI are largely attributed to the salary increases that this body wanted to see, not so much in regards to cemetery maintenance.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Director Williams, is there something that you need to add? Because I heard you speaking. She got it. Okay, all right, thanks.
Okay, EMS, the amount that we're giving EMS, does that include 3% cost of living increase or whatever that we were supposed to give them? And they're now at 2.7. And I think in the contract, it's like 3% cost of living or what have you for the life of the contract, correct?
That's correct. You're talking about Central EMS.
Yeah, Central EMS. So pretty soon, we're going to be at $3 million. Well, we're at 2.7, so another 3%, we're going to be at $3 million. I guess I just wanted to bring that out to say, woo, that's going to be a lot of money for ambulances running up and down the streets of Augusta, Georgia. I'll end with this. I've got more questions, Mr. Mayor, but I'll let somebody else, and then I'll come back or what have you. Marriott parking. Yeah, Marriott parking. Why do we pay for that?
That's part of the parking deck.
Yeah, but shouldn't we are we getting monies from them? And we're using the monies that they give us, or what?
That is a contract that is signed with the Marriott for the operations of the parking center.
Yeah, but I understand that technically everything belongs to the city of Augusta. You know, something I was looking at years ago said something about the ground rights and the air rights or something or what have you. I don't know. But technically, my understanding is that the Marriott is the city's hotel, right? So we don't get proceeds from them. And
The hotel does not belong to Augusta, sir.
who does it belong to?
It belongs to the Marriott Corporation. The parking deck belongs to Augusta, and this is to fund the operating agreement that we signed for the Marriott to manage the parking there.
This money that
That's
is
what you,
for?
I believe that's the line item that you're looking at, sir.
So the monies that, when people pay to park over that, none of that comes back to Augusta?
There is an arrangement. I can't speak line item to line item on that contract, but I can certainly get that information for you.
Yeah, that would be interesting
Okay.
because, you know,
But it was a contract that was put before this body and was approved.
okay,
And
I'm
it's-
not saying it wasn't. What I'm understanding is just from talking for folks and past commissioners and what have you, this is something that is a little bit, you know, different for me or what have you.
Well,
Mr. Mayor, I'll let somebody else jump in there and then I'll come back later, okay?
Thank you, Commissioner. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 10th, Commissioner Wayne Guilfoyle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Dowse, as far as on this page that's up right here, the Recreation General Shop had an increase of $833,000. The two below it, which is trees, landscape, and cemeteries, it shows a reduction in the budget. What is that showing a reduction for?
Sure, they transferred positions from one line item to another. Trees and landscaping as well as cemeteries are both accounts underneath the recreation and parks footprint. So as you can see, the decreases in one and the increases in the other essentially offset.
Right. The reduction is $665,410, and the increase is $833, which is higher.
That's correct.
So as far as shifting, when it comes to shifting, can we speak with the Malik as far as using SPLOST money to help capture from SPLOST 7 and SPLOST 8 to help with his department to, I guess, relinquish some money? Can we, Mr. Mayor, can we hear about that? Is this appropriate to discuss this at this time? Or tell me what your agenda is for today.
So
Is to
my agenda-
discuss anything to do with the budget?
Well, considering that SPLOST is a separate funding source, and
Right.
today we're talking about the FY24 budget, I was expecting to receive from this body what changes did you want to see in your final budget, whereas SPLOST would be a separate conversation.
Okay. All right. So if we're going to be discussing what we want in the final budget, I know last year that 2 years ago, the former administrator put out a tune of $10 million. This year, you did a right-sizing plan, which the body has not approved, but $5 million of it was based off sales tax, et cetera, and the other ones was for other departments that actually the fire department, which is actually a different line item on our sales tax, on our property tax, and the utilities and the solid waste. So what are we doing as administrator to offset this $10 million before next year hits us?
Sir, I've already presented a balanced budget, and a portion of the ARP cost, including the supplemental pay, are included in this figure, which was to the tune of about, I think about $1.3 million to eradicate the supplemental pay for full-time employees. That's a portion of that cost.
All right, so you got, so that 8.7 that we're going, for next year, are we going to have a shortfall based on this $10 million that was utilized?
No, sir. Of the remaining $8 million, all of those costs are not recurring. And so there would be recommendations for FY25 as to determine what costs would be funded by other funding streams.
Should we do that this year instead of waiting until next year to face that music?
No, sir. I've already presented a balanced budget, so there's no need to address any of those future FY25 concerns in the FY24 budget unless this body chooses to do so. But based upon my recommendations, no.
All right, as far as this presentation that you have done, the Augusta Canal Authority has, they in a shortfall. They had asked for 300,000. You know, if we could up that, if it was up to me, let's see if we could up that. I know Mr. Bobby had recommended on his position on certain things. So if we could put that on the line of what we would like to see.
Commissioner, you stated up that. What would your increased
Up it
figure
from
be?
150,000 to 300,000.
Canal Authority.
Yes.
All right. So for clarity, you're asking to restore the full ask for the
Yes,
Canal
sir.
Authority back to 300,000, all right?
So in the next meetings that we have, we could bring up other questions in regards to this budget. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Guilfoyle, you yield. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 7th, Commissioner Sean Frandom.
Thank you. I have a lot of questions, as you all can imagine. My first question, you said that we have a balanced budget, so we don't want to discuss things from a cutting standpoint, let's just call it. But couldn't we still be balanced and we just put more in the reserve fund if we cut things? Isn't
Sure.
that- I mean,
And-
so.
And Commissioner, please note, I did not say that we don't want to discuss things from a cutting standpoint. I was just pointing out that I presented a balanced budget for
Right.
FY '24, and the concerns that Commissioner Guilfoyle raised are more so FY '25 issues that would need to be addressed.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. I got you. I just think that, like, we all know that with the money running out on ARP funds, that next year is going to be even more challenging than this year with the 5% growth. So it lessens the burden a little bit if we were to make cuts to this year and put more towards the reserves, as opposed to just letting it go through and deal with that when we deal with it, because the fire tax I've already heard wanting to be talked about. Street lights is coming. And it's going to lessen the pain if we don't have, if we have good conversations this year, possibly it won't be as hurt as much next year. But I'll get to my questions and hopefully we'll have more discussion on that. I got basically going through the book here, and I'll give everybody the chance to, as I go through these questions, to get to the page that I'm at. Just trying to understand the why. Starting on tab 3, behind tab 3, page 64, the excise tax on rental motor vehicles. The budgeted amount is $750,000 this year, $750,000 next year. Can you explain to me why nothing has been allocated towards that? Is that an end of the year thing? Like, what's the reasoning on that? Because it was 195 and now it's 750,000. 2 years ago it was 195.
Okay. That is the portion of the excise tax that is allocated. The motor vehicle excise tax is allocated in 3 different things. I wish I had a chance to look
Well,
up
yeah,
this
I apologize,
beforehand. But that is an allocation out of the total that is collected, the 750, and I believe that amount goes towards funding the bond payments for the Laney Walker Bethlehem bonds. That is that 750. Then there is a portion of the amount that is collected that goes to transit, and there is another portion, but I need to
Yeah, I
go
guess
back and
my
get that,
question is, like, why do we have to wait till the end of the year on all? Is this typical of what we do?
That
I
is
guess?
just an accounting entry to transfer it to the fund where it needs to go. It is, the collection is shown in another fund. Sometimes there are duplications because the same transaction or portions of the transaction have to be accounted for in more than one spot.
Okay. All right. Moving on. And again, I'm sorry I couldn't get all these to you, but there's a lot of questions I have. Page 69, tab 3. Yeah, I mean, I got about 8 questions. The transportation fee, again, I always say this every time we come up here. It's going up $250,000. What's the why? And then it's only at $560 now. Why do we anticipate that that's?
That's the $1 bed tax, sir. Remember?
Okay, so
And as
we can get it 3
the
months.
hotel rentals increase and there are more, I'm sorry, but that was just a common name for it, the hotel bed tax. It's the $1 per night. And so that goes up.
And speaking on that, the drink tax that paid for the cyber deck, that stops next year, so there will be an additional amount of money going back into the fund next year that we'll be able to use, correct? Because it's gone to pay off the deck than it was with CVB? Is that correct? Isn't that correct?
Yeah.
So we're going to get some money back next year?
Okay.
All right.
Right.
And, I mean, so there's a good thing there.
Because there's more than one drink tax. So I
Yeah,
was
the
trying
drink
to
tax for the
focus-
debt that we paid for
Yes.
comes
Yes.
off next year. So that's
Short
one good
answer is
thing we got
yes.
going on. As we go through this budget, there's a lot of like line items that it's just kind of like, what is this for? And the other sales, page 94, under the transit. Again, nothing is there allocated. We had 2.3. We went from 747 to 2.3. Is this for the new building? Like, what is it? Page 94, tab 3, page 94, at the top.
You're in the revenue column.
Yeah, that's revenues.
Which
You're-
line item are you
The top
looking
one.
at?
I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
other
the top
sales
one.
tax.
Other sales tax, yes, that is, the new phase of TIA allocates more money to transit operations.
Okay. So does that mean, is there an offset on the other end? Like, if we're getting more money in, or are we just giving transit more money? Like,
No, it actually, you subsidize transit from several different sources. That reduces the burden on the general fund. Yes, sir.
and we're sure that 2.3 is going to happen because there's nothing allocated. I guess that's why I'm asking these questions.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because 747 to 2.3, that's a significant.
Yes. That is TIA 2,
Okay.
right?
All right. That's good news. Stormwater fees, page 106. We were going from a budget of 14.7 to a budget of 13.9. I don't think we have less properties. What's the 800,000 difference?
We have been in discussions with the director. He feels that budget revenue projection is a more accurate projection of the amounts billed and the amounts collected. You know, there are an awful
Those we
lot of
don't get.
credits available in that program for large properties, and a good number of them have taken advantage of those. So this number more accurately reflects the billing and collection amounts that are expected.
Okay, I hear you. I just think that that's a little bit interesting that, in 2022 it was 13.9, and now we're going to say, and now we're going to say it's $12,000 more from 2021. I mean, that doesn't,
Be
okay.
happy to review those with Dr. Malik and
Yeah.
get back to you.
Again, it's just something I'm seeing. I mean, if Dr. Malik wants to speak on it.
You may either have him speak or at least direct him to be prepared to answer that next session.
Yeah, okay, we'll just answer it next
We
time.
can talk.
That way, if there's other things, we could give him a list of, any of your concerns that's directed towards
Yeah,
Dr.
that's,
Malik.
that's perfect.
Yeah, I got it.
The health insurance on page 108, tab 3, employer contribution. Why would we think it would go down?
108.
$733,000.
That is our projection based on the number of filled positions that we currently have and the employer contributions. That number will be what is required to support the fund because you know that this is the revenue again. So when you have fewer folks actually on the payroll, those calculations come in at both the employee and the employer portion as a calculation from the payroll. We may be currently experiencing a different mix that where before we may have had more employees that had family coverage or employee plus one, some of our employees are now choosing employee only, which has a smaller employee contribution and consequently a smaller employer contribution associated with it.
Okay.
So that's a calculation based on our employee population.
Okay. On page 119, we, of tab 3 still, the employer pension contribution, 1945 plan. Do we typically do those at the end of the year, and that's why it's zero?
We do.
Okay.
That is
That's what I
both
thought.
for the 45 and the 49 plans. Those are done at the end of the year to the actuarially required level.
Okay. Page, tab 4, page 31. Explain to me what, on the TIA, we've only spent, it's budgeted 2.5 million this year, 2.5 million next year, but we've only spent $5,000. Like, why is it that that number is so low? Hamid would have to answer that one.
Dr. Malik.
Okay.
This is an expenditure. It takes him a while to get projects
I
in
would
the
like to know this
pipeline.
answer.
And so that can go on with the
Dr. Malik,
discussion.
could you come forward on this one?
All right, I'm starting to stuff.
I'm not attacking him.
All right, Dr. Malik, I had requested we give you an opportunity, but they want an answer on this item, sir.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Do you understand the numbers that I'm asking?
Which page? Page 34?
Page 31, the TIA Phase 2 discretionary funds, there's 2.5 allocated this year. Only $5,000 of it had been spent, 2.5 million. And I'm just trying to understand, like, why so little, what's going on?
Page 31,
That ground.
it says operational transfer from TIA.
I'm sorry?
On page 31, it says operational transfer from TIA.
No, he's talking about the top line. for
The top line
engineering.
under engineering.
Okay.
Dr. Malik, I think your response would be attributed to the fact that Tier 2, and this is a new phase that has just started, so he hasn't started spending out of that new phase as of yet. Is that correct?
So TIA 2, yes, I mean, in
Okay.
short answer, yes, we just doing that.
It's a new phase, Commissioner.
So is it safe to say that $2.5 million is going back in the general fund at the end of the year?
No,
No,
sir.
no.
Sir.
Well,
It
I mean,
stays
then
at-
tell me what we're spending on, like, let's
It's
get
a-
some answers.
It's
I
going to
mean,
remain in the TIA, in the
The end of the
TIA
year is
line.
coming.
I'm sorry? It
end of
doesn't
the
have
year
to
is
be
coming.
spent.
How are we spending it?
It does not have to be spent by year end.
These are considered capital projects, and any unspent funds roll forward to the next year.
So is he going to have $5 million next year instead of 2.5? Is that what you're basically going to
He will
have?
have the balance that is available over the entire phase of TIA. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So the Tier 2, giving the collection rate, roughly every year we get around $5 million. Now, it used to be 3.5. So 2.5 million going into construction, like 2024 supplemented the Broad Street. So that's why the money is still not used, but it's already been obligated on that. Some going into resurfacing, some also going into the construction support on all that. Some of this also going into, like 650,000 is allocated in this budget going to the transit out of that. And I think there's other, some allocations coming out of the TIA. So that's on that, but there will be lag in expenditures from year to year, you know.
Well, again, like, you know, we sit up here and we ask about, you know, projects and funding and that sort of thing, and just to see that amount of money not have been spent or even discussed, I guess, that's why I had to bring it up and just ask the question, not to attack anybody, but okay. Appreciate that. On page 35, tab 4 still, we stopped funding the Saturday market. Does that affect the Saturday Mart, or is that stuff that we did for them? I guess my question. Or
Was capital outlay, I believe.
that stuff we
lighting
did for them?
project- That was the
Okay.
lighting
Okay.
project down there.
Okay.
It's a one-time deal.
Makes sense.
Do they need money?
Have they ever requested money?
No, not as an NGO.
Okay. This is just a general question, just based on a lot of, what could we, in this government, get rid of the contingency line item in every budget as a cut?
Oh,
There's a lot of contingency where there's zero spent, and there's contingency all through this book. And I guess that's my question, like, what does that look like?
Okay, some of the contingency fund that we typically refer to is in the general fund. Right now, if there is a contingency in another fund, it does not have any impact whatsoever on the general fund at all. If you don't have a contingency line item, then every single unforeseen expenditure that comes up would be paid for from fund balance. And that's just not a recommended fiscal policy to go to fund balance for every unexpected occurrence that happens during the year. I
Okay.
mean, where else are you?
I just, there's a lot, I mean, the one I'm looking at is transit on page 53. You know, last year, I mean, it's 14,000 is the administrative recommendation. I'm just trying to understand, like, why does it need to be in all these I mean, that's just one, there's a bunch of them in here. Like, why do we have to have this contingency line item? Why would we just not put that in a contingency pot to where their budgets shrink, and if we don't use it, we don't use it, and it goes back to the general
Any
fund?
contingency anywhere that is unspent rolls back into that fund's fund balance. It's just, it is a budget it is a placeholder for unexpected occurrences. It doesn't cause the organization any extra expenditures by having an amount that is sitting there and available for any occurrences that might happen during the year. If you had I mean, if something happened.
And I understand. I guess my thing is that, like, we know we have to have a balanced budget, and some of that is because of the revenue. It's because of the revenue we bring in. So to the people, though, they think we're just spending all this money. If we were able to put more in reserves and take it out of departments, and that's, I mean, it's still balanced, but it's showing that, like, we're being a little bit more conservative in the department heads' budgets, I guess, in a sense.
That is the 329 that you are looking for that has $1,400 in there. That's under the contingency line item. That is where currently the cost of living raise is for all funds, because we have not spread it to the individual departments within that fund. So that is the sum total. If you're looking at that line item on contingency for the 14.2 on that page 53, that currently is the cost of living. Once we get to presenting you the adopted budget, that amount will go away, and it will show up in the departmental expenditures for folk in that fund that have employees that are getting the 3% cost of living.
Okay. I've only got 3 questions left. I'm sorry, guys.
Take your time.
I'm going to ask this again because TIA Phase 1, 52 million budgeted, 3.6 million, page 58, tab 4, 3.6 million actuals. Like, I don't get it. Why, is it all for Broad Street? And we just, because now,
Those funds, and as to the rate of expenditures, I can't answer that. As to the budgeting process, all funds that are obligated for TIA will continue to roll forward until they're spent. It's just like you still see some things out there for SPLOST 5, SPLOST 6, SPLOST 7. those funds continue to roll forward, and when the funds roll forward, you have to have a budget in order to spend them on that project. So this is TIA 1, which you're probably going to see TIA 1 for the next several years as those funds continue to be spent. I don't know, you've got how many years to, Dr. Malik is the technical expert on this one, but that's how the budget process works for capital projects.
So we have a lot of money sitting in the bank.
You have some, the unspent funds would be in the bank invested at a rate that you're earning interest on.
And those funds can only be used for TIA, correct?
Yes.
Come on up.
Yes. That's how the program works.
So the TIA is a reimbursable program. So we spend the money when we get it from the GDOT. So funds are with the GDOT, not with the Augusta.
So we don't get it unless we spend it.
Yes, sir.
And that's my issue, is that we haven't spent anything. Like what?
So right now we got 6 projects in downtown, roughly $98 million, which are under contract. So, and it's already been approved by the GDOT. So as we spend every month, engineering submit the reimbursement request with all the expenditure receipts and everything, and then we get it back through, electronically. So these funds will be spent the next, 2 to 3 years as the project proceed and construction improves. So.
What happens if the project cost goes up? Does GDOT still pay it all?
Well, the cost is already locked in because we already have a contract in that, and GDOT did supplement the downtown projects around $13 million.
Okay. All right. Dang it, I just lost that. I lost my page. Oh, here it is. Why does the airport have such a large contingency? What would that be for? Page, I'm sorry, 74.
They had a rather large pool of federal money that came their way. It is essentially as they decide what projects those are going to be spent, but that you would need to speak directly to the airport director to get a more definitive
So it's
answer.
basically funds that they got in and they have to spend in a sense.
Mostly capital projects that will have to roll forward.
So I guess I'm sitting here going, if they hadn't spent the 1.2 in 2023, why are we giving them 2.7 or 2.3 in 2024 for contingent?
We're not giving anything, sir. We're just accounting for it.
Okay.
Those are all airport funds. They're obligated for the airport. They
I
cannot be
talked about
spent
that
any
one.
other way.
Obligated, yeah. And then the last question, I have 2 questions left. I don't need to ask that one. But my last question is that each department, do we go through line item by line item and see where their expenditures are and whether they're the expended things or not? I'm gonna give you one example. Recreation department, natural gas, $80,000. Haven't spent a dime of it. Or like as an expense, like have we gone through, we take that out this year and reallocated it, things like that?
We do review each department and their line item, current expenditures as well as previous, as well as against what's been budgeted. But please note concerning natural gas, it's just getting cool. And so natural gas is mostly where our heat is funneled through. So those costs would generally start to come up later in the year or the early portion of the year.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Frantham is done, and he yields. Now we're going to recognize the commissioner from the first, Commissioner Jordan Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know how to come up behind that one, but I have a few questions as well, so let's jump on in. I want to start at the Canal Authority request. We're asking to increase to restore their original request. Do we have an idea what that $300,000 is being requested for?
Yes, sir. So the Canal Authority originally requested $300,000 for the maintenance of the facility. As you are aware, Augusta, Georgia owns the facility. However, the Canal Authority has been conducting maintenance primarily to not only the actual facility, but also the external bathrooms. They have suffered some wear and tear. This also includes their issues surrounding security, as well as liability insurance, electrical fees for security lighting for the trailway system, and then they've had some problems with their generator, which is their primary source of revenue. So all of those coupled with their concerns amounted to $300,000, and my recommendation for $150,000.
What was your recommendation based on?
One, the fact that we had millions of dollars in request, and while the Canal Authority is operating as a NGO, they do have a separate revenue stream.
Okay.
And so
That was my question.
based upon that information, to include the fact that it is Augusta's facility, and we want to make sure that we maintain it, hence the $150,000 for
But they
direct
do generate their
maintenance.
own revenue in a sense.
Excuse me?
But you say they do generate their own revenue?
They do have a separate revenue source, yes.
All right. I'll move on from that. We'll come back at a later time. I see in the budget that Pendleton King Park, you recommended $174,000 for Pendleton King Park. Now, I'm not advocating to not give this money because that's one of my favorite parks in the city. I hear you, Commissioner. I already knew who it was. But I just want to know, I know at one point we talked about entering into some type of agreement with them to take on a little bit more financial responsibility for the park. Where are we with that? I tell you what, we'll go back to that one.
What are they asking for?
What is the $174,000 for?
Commissioner Johnson, if you don't mind, can you share with us, do you have a page?
Oh, I didn't write down the
You didn't write
page.
down. Okay,
Let's
never
see.
mind, never mind.
It's somewhere near Parks and Recreation's budget.
Never mind, okay, all right.
Let me try to find it, because I'm just rolling through
Just
this.
trying to keep the colleagues up here on cue
Yes,
so we
sir.
all see it.
Well, they should have read the book. They should know where it's at.
So if you look on, thank you, Commissioner. If you look on, if you look on,
Page 6, behind tab 4.
yeah, page 6, tab 4.
Thank you. Get us on time.
Sir, I'm only showing a difference of $3,000 from their 23 to 24 request, or what was recommended, so there's not much of a difference.
You're right, but I just want to know what are they requesting that 174, that 176? What is the purpose of that 176? And then
Salary and wages for the employees that work at the park.
Plus electricity.
salary,
Utilities.
wages, utilities, but we're also still covering their maintenance. Are we still cutting the grass and covering the maintenance? Is that still feasible? Okay, so again, we talked about about a year or so ago. We mentioned about a year or so ago that we wanted to go to the table with them and figure out how they can take more of a financial responsibility here. I just want to throw that back at the top of our minds because I'm not saying that we should take that away, but I want to just make sure they pay their fair share as well.
And the department is currently speaking with them. They've
Okay.
not reached an agreement at this time.
Okay, let's see, if we go to Lake Olmsted Stadium, it's a $20,000 increase, looks like, almost $20,000 increase. Can you share what that's about?
That's for utilities.
That's still on tab, page 6.
Page 6, tab 4. It's page 6, tab 4. Yeah, page 6, tab 4.
Here. That's what was budgeted.
Yeah, that's operation, so that would be utility. I thought we said page 6.
Did you say page 6?
Page 6 under tab 4, the second
Oh, you're in detail.
The second item is Lake Olmsted Stadium.
Electricity.
Yeah, it's your normal utility, that's your operation budget.
Some advertising, repairs and maintenance.
Advertising for what? They're not operable right now.
So do note that although it is in the advertising line item, the department can do a budget transfer request and move those funds. But you're exactly right. Why is it in the advertising budget? And those details we just didn't catch as to why it's in the advertising budget. Can you
But
think of
majority
why
of
you
that,
would
so
have done 30%?
we can move from the advertising portion. I just want to get to the meat of
That
it.
banjo with you and all that was happening at Lake Homestead.
So the bulk of the 97,000 is utilities. The bulk of the 97,000 is utilities.
Yes, maintenance, yes.
Buildings and maintenance. Okay, let's continue. At our last presentation, we spoke about the need for a homeless service coordinator. And I know that we weren't able to find the dollars for that, but I want to just take a stab at this. You know, we are continuing to see our numbers increase. We're continuing to see folks give, talk about the issues around homelessness. I think that it's important that we have somebody to follow through with that plan. So I'm going to throw it out there that we try to find the funding to at least have someone come in and look at the plan and follow through with it.
So in speaking with Director Welcher, we do have a homeless coordinator. That individual is currently operating in that role and is working with the homeless task force as well as the other nonprofit agencies in support of the housing program.
And how long ago did they start working? Do you remember?
Recent.
Very recent. Okay, good. All right, next. The sheriff's office, they are requesting $1.9 million. Is that true? 1.9 million?
No, sir, they requested over $5 million, and I have recommended $1.9 million.
How many of those out of that 1.9 million is going towards his vacancies?
Those are
Those are all positions that are being filled?
No, those are filled positions. Those will go in support of their filled positions as well as increasing his base salary from $45,000 to about $50,000.
To fill his vacancy.
To fill his vacancies, that's correct.
Okay. And in the event that those vacancies don't get filled, are we going to continue to fund those?
Yes.
I think we need to have a conversation about that. Do we continue to fund them or do we take them back?
No,
We
they're
keep funding
funded.
Okay. Get back in the queue. Get back in the queue, Commissioner. I feel you, but we'll come back to that one. I have a couple of questions, Commissioner. I feel you, but we'll come back to that one. I have a couple of questions. I want to get through the list. Page 27, under tab 4. We're going to come back to that one for sure. But I want to get through this list. Page 27, under tab 4. Eastview Park shows a decrease of $150,000. I want to make sure that that $150,000 that we allocated towards park improvements isn't being cut.
No, sir, that was a capital expenditure.
All right, next item. I also saw, and I don't remember where it was, but the Caddy Monument for Sand Hills wasn't being shown on here either. Are we cutting the Caddy Monument project?
No, sir, that was also capital.
Okay, all right, got you. Let's move on down. I have two more questions and I'm done here. The internal audit, $450,000. How does that differ from what the action the commission made to make sure that departments create SOPs? Like, do we need this operation? Is this internal review or audit or whatever we're calling it at a price tag of $450,000 when the commission made an action not too long ago to hold the departments accountable to the same standard that I would imagine the auditor would hold them to?
So as this RFP is currently still considered an open procurement, it has not been finalized. Based upon what the final cost would be, I would then be able to come back to this body with some recommendations as to how we can proceed based upon the cost.
Okay, because if it's $450,000, I'll be the first to go out on a limb and say, I can't support that. And it's not because I don't think that this thing is a good idea, although I don't see the need. I just think that that $450,000 is a lot of money to catch a rabbit, so we'll go back, we'll get there later. And my final note is about the road resurfacing program. We received this sheet here. Well, I'm going to discuss it. We have, I'm going to discuss it. We have some questions here. Can I ask my questions? We have some roads under this list that that's not on this repavement list. I want to make sure that we put on the list roads throughout the Laney Walker neighborhood, Cary Street, Hopkins Street, 11th and 12th Street, because those roads are in disrepair. So I wanted to say it on the floor so it's a matter of public record that we're requesting these items to be added to the repavement list for the year. Okay? And that's all I have.
You said Cary, and what was the other
Cary
street?
Street, Hopkins Street, 11th and 12th in the Laney Walker neighborhood. Those roads haven't been resurfaced in decades. So,
Keep in mind, Commissioner, this is the listing that the department is using for their most current RFP that has yet to be advertised, but the department director is present and taking note of your needs.
understood. That's why I said it out loud. Thank you, Ms. Dowse. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You got it, Commissioner Johnson. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 10th. Commissioner Wayne Guilfoyle, you back in the queue, sir.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Dowse, the slide that you have up on the screen, what is the reason for the increase of $1 million for the election expense? Is that for the presidential election for next year is causing that?
Sure, not just the presidential election, but there's 3 elections slated for FY24.
Right.
Which, as Augusta has to fund those, that would attribute to the $1 million increase in cost.
All right. Thank you for that answer. So what you had said, you are presenting us a balanced budget. So we are not carrying anything forward on the street lights, and the debt is satisfied with this budget. Is that correct?
That's correct. If you recall, I proposed managing the debt through ARP funds that have already been allocated for the streetlight deficit.
Okay. Do you have your budget book right there in front of you?
I do.
Okay. If you turn to tab 4, page 3. This is probably an easy answer on this one under the cyber parking debt. It's a little bit over halfway down under the second section, third one up. In 2021, the actual was spent was $55,000. This year so far is you budgeted $89,400, and we have yet to use any money. Is that a end of the year payment that we do for the parking deck? Because we're showing $89,000 for next year as well.
Yes, sir. It is an end of the year offset.
That wasn't satisfied with the SPLOST in this past package by chance?
There are funds that will be available to pay off the debt for the parking deck through the SPLOST. I believe that this is not the debt portion of that. There are some operating expenditures, I believe, per that agreement that are ours. But I would like the chance to research that and get you a better answer.
Okay.
Because quite frankly, I would be, if Tim were here, I would be asking him, because that's one area that he oversees.
Right. So Donna, while I have you up, I'm going to move my little thing around under revenue, page 3.
What are you doing? Where you at?
Page 3 under tab 3.
Okay.
A little bit halfway down under IDC recovery, waste management recovery, solid waste recovery.
Okay. All right. There.
Yep. Tab 3, page 3.
Okay.
Okay. Specifically? Okay, you want. The IDC stands for indirect cost allocation, which you're all very familiar with. And there is a firm, nationally recognized, that comes in and does a study, Maximus. They give us books this thick. They use measurement criteria to determine the allocation of administrative expenses that are housed in the general fund back to other user funds. So the revenue that you see here is an expenditure in those other funds to reimburse the general fund for catch-all term is overhead expenditures. But you have departments like HR, procurement, the clerk's office that do work, central services that do work for other funds.
Okay.
This is the allocation process to charge those costs back to those user funds.
So we pull out 1.5 from the solid waste as revenue to offset the costs of the attorneys, the payroll, the HR, finance, et cetera.
That's the, yes, sir, that's the
Okay.
process.
Then what is a franchise fee that we charge in 6% to the solid waste used for then?
That is, the franchise fee is designed to mimic if those enterprise funds, which are designed to work on the same principles, the same accounting principles, the same rules as a private business. Georgia Power pays you a franchise fee. Natural Gas pays you a franchise fee. AT&T pays you a franchise fee. So the accounting rules are set up very similar to those for those enterprise funds. So
Okay, so,
those fees are paid by policy of this government, do pay to the general fund a franchise fee at the rate of which was set by this commission.
okay, so Donna, you saying that any, naturally, natural gas, AT&T, power company that uses our right-of-way has to pay a franchise fees. What's the charge that these companies pay Augusta, Richmond County as far as percentage?
Okay, it varies, and it
Okay,
varies
give
by
me an
state
average,
law.
3 to 5, 5 to 9.
4.5 to 5.
Huh?
4.5 to 5.
4.5 to 5, but we charge our within our own department 6%. But here's the catch. The solid waste doesn't use our right-of-ways, do they? I'm asking. I mean, because I don't know how we got to the point where I guess it's used in the past to balance our budget over these years, and we got up to 6%. That was per se passed by this commission. But I think as a body, we might want to look at that because it's detrimental to this one department that we're trying to get that's back up on its feet to where it's actually being usually the two departments that we gain revenue from is utility and solid waste, and they can't get back on their feet to where they are productive and efficient if we steadily taking the money out of their department. The other issue, this is for the administrator. Thank you, Ms. Donna. For the administrator. Ms. Dowse, as far as the fire department, we have career ladders in every facet of that department except for one. I think it might be worth it for our colleagues to have a clear understanding of this. The position that doesn't have a step-up career or anything is the maintenance person. Is there any way that we could implement something for the maintenance? Because I think it's just a set salary, I believe it is, and there's no room for improvement unless they get a COLA raise.
Are you speaking of the maintenance personnel just within the fire department?
Yes,
or
ma'am.
maintenance person, because there's other maintenance personnel within other departments as well?
Right, within central service, y'all had different levels of maintenance people, but in the fire department, it's just one.
Yeah, the fire department can too create positions based upon his current vacancies. He could reclassify positions as needed based upon the needs of his department.
Okay.
So if he needs a maintenance person too, he's well within the 3 p.m. policies and procedures to reclassify a position based upon his need.
Okay. And one other thing is, as far as, I really don't want to get to next year during the budget session and go, hey, we're going to have to raise taxes or we're going to have to increase the fire department tax. I know that the mayor had brought forth to ask departments to come with a modeling of all the departments, see if they could cut anywhere from 5% just to see what it would look like. Naturally, this body did not approve it, but I would ask this body if we could look at reducing this budget by 0.5 cent. 0.5 cent would generate $5.5 million for our next year's budget. Would that be correct? And then with the $5 million with the increase of sales tax, that'll give us our shortfall.
Well, and Commissioner, I would like to also point out your figures earlier surrounding the anticipated shortfall for FY25. As I stated, most of those costs are not recurring costs. The largest recurring cost is the supplemental salaries,
Right.
of which a large portion of those full-time employees who receive supplemental pay that's proposed in this budget will no longer receive supplemental pay in FY24.
Okay.
So your recurring cost lies within your salary line items, which totals a little bit more now of $3 million. So your $8 million shortfall that you're projecting, majority of that are not recurring costs.
Right, okay. In 2021, I guess our actual revenue was $680,114,623. That's page 124 of tab 3. And then in 2023, we jumped up to right at 1.1, and here we are at 1.156. And that was carried, most of that revenue was generated by sales tax, would that be correct?
So you're looking at the total revenue for all funds.
Yes, ma'am.
You've got a swing of $84 million from ARP.
Right.
You have a new phase of SPLOST that kicked in, so all that revenue is in there. You don't see the effect just from the operating revenues. You see the effect across all funds. You see in the current budget there is anticipated approximately $90 million from both in revenue and expenditures for a bond issue by utilities.
Okay.
So there are a lot of different things going on in
Donna,
here.
what's our average on revenue from sales tax alone? Tell me what page you're going to be going to.
Commissioner, is that something we could park and give her an opportunity to address it?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, all right.
You know, we give you the nice colored chart with all the bars on it every year that shows you month by month by month by month. I will update that and send that to you guys.
Can you give it to me year by year by year for the last 4 years?
My chart goes back at least 5 years.
Okay, that'll work.
All right.
Thank you. Thank
Sure.
you, Ms. Dowse. Thank you, Ms. Donna.
All right, you yield, Commissioner Guilfoyle? Commissioner Guilfoyle yields. The chair recognizes Commissioner from the 3rd, Commissioner McKnight.
Okay, I should have probably jumped in. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, about this earlier after Commissioner Guilfoyle brought it up. I'm going to go back to the canal, Augusta Canal. And my thoughts on this is that I think it is valuable and worthy to support the $300,000 that they're asking. It's, important to the community for lifestyle reasons, as well as leveraging investments made in downtown. You got the Croc Center, the mills, and more. And they actually could really use it at this time. And so I'm going to be very supportive of that and hope that my colleagues will support Commissioner Guilfoyle and I on this. I'd hate to see the authority curtail services to our community due to the lack of funding. So,
All right, Commissioner McKnight.
also, I'm going to also bring back up, need to put this on the agenda with Ms. Bonner about the operation audit, find out where we are on that as well. The operational audit, but I'll bring it up at the next session, work session.
Well, Commissioner, as stated earlier in my presentation, this particular audit is under negotiations right now with the finance and the procurement department. And once negotiations conclude, we will bring before this body a recommendation to move forward or not.
Okay. Well, we've been talking about the recommendations and doing all this for a couple of months, so I just would like to get an update.
Yes, ma'am. And the procurement process does take a couple of months, but I'm pleased with the progress that we've made concerning this item.
All right. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Commissioner McKnight, you yield the floor?
Yes, sir, I
Thank-
appreciate it.
Yes, Chair recognizes Commissioner from the second, Commissioner Stacy Pulliam.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Administrator Dowse, thank you so much for your presentation. I have a question. For the NGOs, is there an application process, or what do they have to submit to you to actually put in their request for finances?
So during our budget process, that starts generally around June, yes, there is a packet that they would have to obtain from the Finance Department and complete with a series of documents that's required to be included for review and consideration to be either added or to allow continued funding in the government's budget.
What are some of those documents that are requested?
Previous year's audit, their sources of revenue, their current year expenses, if they are requesting funding, what those funding needs are, why, the amounts of funding, just to name a few.
Okay. And so do we review on a yearly basis? Because, well, let me back up. Do they say what they need that funding for? Is that part of the application process?
Yes.
Okay. Do we go back and do we review the next year or the next 2 years, however many years they say that it's going to take them to spend that amount of money? Do we go back and review their records to make sure that the funds were used as allocated?
The Finance Department is responsible for reviewing their annual audit. They have to submit an audit, and their audit would detail their sources, their revenues, as well as their expenditures and how those funds were spent. If an MOU is extended, then it may require additional reporting mechanisms to be submitted as well. But yes, those documents are required.
In the event the funds were not spent the way they were supposed to be spent, what happens at that point? Do we no longer extend that to them?
Most of the MOUs with the NGOs are for general operations. They're not normally specifically for a project. So the fact that they return an audit to us as required and name us specifically, as one of their funding sources satisfies the requirements for the MOU if it is just for operations. And most of them are. I mean, if you look at, the boxing club, they continue to operate. Mock Academy is one. They provide us with their audit. Their funding source is for their operations. So when they provide those required documents to us, they have essentially satisfied the terms of the MOU.
Okay. My last part to this question is, will any of these requests be moved over to Augusta tomorrow? I know at one point we were talking about an application process for us to funnel some of the ask through them. Destination Augusta, I'm sorry.
Oh, can you repeat that again? Because I started off thinking about Augusta tomorrow.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. Did not mean to do that. For Destination Augusta, I know we discussed having an application process through Destination Augusta where if they needed funding for different things, be it parades, et cetera, there was going to be an application process that would be funneled through them. So would that change some of these asks next year?
No, ma'am. The NGO requests that are presented in the budget are not festival and parade related. These are operational requests for a various number of NGOs, most of which were also funded in FY23 as well as previous years. The funding for festivals and parades has been recommended at $50,000 as a separate line item that will go to Destination Augusta for that purpose.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Pulliam. Chair recognizes, we got two colleagues in the queue, two more. Commissioner Williams from the 5th. You back on, sir.
Yes, sir. I'll be quick. Ms. Dowse, as I listen to some of my colleagues and the things that they want, request, what have you, you may have some people, a person make a request for $300,000 for the Canal Authority. Well, I do know that the library folks want 300,000 also. So I'm going to ask you to take a look at restoring $300,000 to the library. One thing we don't want them to fall back into the shortfalls that they had before. I'm not requesting you to talk about that. I just need you to look at that and consider that if you would. I did want to ask you about, and I see these folks still in this building from time to time, the youth court people or what have you. Is the building over on Craig Halton, is it ready?
No, sir, it is not ready. Central Services has been working with juvenile court to value engineer a construction plan that is currently within budget. Early estimates far exceed the budget for this project. And so at the first of the year, when we come to you with a funding plan and a proposal on how to proceed, that will include what is happening with Craig Halton's renovation.
Okay.
But it is far from being ready, as there are not enough funds allocated for that project.
But we had the money in the SPLOST. It was what, $6, $7, $8 million in the
Yes, sir.
SPLOST?
However, early construction estimates exceeded by more than $40 million.
All we're doing is just changing the building, right? Up a little bit and to create a classroom turns into, and I see Mr. Lampkin back there shaking his head or whatever, but we may have to put some chairs together and put one of those things up in front with a microphone and say we call it court, because you telling me $6 million won't change it?
No,
Like
sir.
we need it?
$6 million was not enough for what early construction estimates have provided. Hence, we will be coming back to this body the first of the year with a funding plan.
Okay, can we see those plans and what their expectations are? Because whatever you're talking about for 40 million, that far exceeds what we were thinking about, especially, you know, with the $6, $7, $8 million we had for the building in the SPLOST, and we were just going to transfer that money over and keep rolling with it, or what have you.
And I do have a correction to note. I stated $40 million. However, the department director just corrected me and said it is $32 million. So forgive me.
Yeah,
I rounded, but we're still over budget severely.
Yeah, and we need to take a look at that. Okay. All right. So going past that, the library, I looked at the cost and the allocation for juvenile court. Do we have enough money in juvenile court? I think I saw 1.6 million for juvenile court. And I know just from working with juveniles and working in the school system, I'm not sure that's enough money for them. I just ask you to,
What page are you looking at?
It was, I think around page 6, I believe, and under the first tab, I think. Somewhere around there, under juvenile court. We'll find it. Just think about it.
Okay, while I can't specifically answer the line item that you're looking for, the court budgets were reviewed with the court administrator. And so that he is in agreement that the amounts that have been presented will adequately fund their operations.
Okay.
And also keep in mind, Commissioner, what was the difference from what they requested versus what was allocated is less than $5,000. So yes, they did receive what they requested.
Okay. I'm on page 8, the tab 3.
Revenue.
Okay, and I'm not looking at it from a revenue standpoint. Okay, yeah, but are we still paying for that building?
Which building?
The DFAX building.
As far as paying for it,
Paying for it, renovations?
no, sir.
anything?
Renovations have been completed. DFAX has moved in, and now DFAX pays Augusta a monthly rent, which the rent, in accordance with the lease agreement, offsets the upfront construction costs.
Okay, all right. I noticed, and maybe the fire chief can answer this, I noticed the fire chief has 90 vacancies, but he's requesting 7. So if you got 90 vacancies and you're requesting 7, so how does that, I mean,
And his requests were not included in the recommended budget. The fire chief and I have had this conversation, and he is currently working with the Human Resources Director on a plan to organize his department in a more efficient manner.
okay, and I know there were some other things that he was requesting. I know you said you're going to work on those things at the same time. I would imagine that the fire chief may need some of those things. So are we looking at next year and trying to secure those things that he may or may not need?
So for FY '24, his needs have been pared down to include his immediate needs versus some of the items that were declared things I say I need. And with that, we have enough dollars, or we have sourced enough funding to ensure that his immediate needs are accounted for. But please be reminded that the fire department needs have historically been included in SPLOST, and they were not included in SPLOST 8.
Okay, when do we start the next SPLOST, looking at the next SPLOST?
We're planning to have SPLOST 9 discussions in January of 2024.
Okay. And so with that, we need to make sure we talk about the fire folks and pods for the sheriff's department and what have you.
All of your project listings, yes.
Okay, is that to include the boathouse and what have you? Okay.
Mr. Williams,
I just, you better be glad. I'm going to stop right there because Tony Lewis said it was going to be a short day.
yeah, all right.
Very short.
So I'll pull it in.
You
Okay.
yield. All right, Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 7th, Commissioner Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mm-mm.
Administrator Dowse, based on ARP funds and based on how we've filled gaps to make this year work, let's just say, I keep hearing this $10 million hole. Do you currently believe, number one, is it 10 million?
No.
Okay, what do you believe it is?
Now we're probably around 4.
4. Okay. So do you believe, you said 4, do you believe that based on this budget that you could find $1 million to cut? And on general fund budget, I'm not talking about the whole budget, I'm talking about general fund.
So your question is, can I find $1 million to cut out of our general fund?
General fund only.
Now, Commissioner, let me remind you, we have a request for additional money for the Canal Authority, for the library.
Well, I mean,
So just to clarify.
well, that's where it's going to get political, Mayor, because if you don't support this one, you're not going to get this one. I mean, I pretty much think we're going to be where we're at. I mean, I hate to say that, but it just feels that way. That some people don't want to support this, some people don't want to support that.
Commissioner, may I ask, is your $1 million request in relation to the $900,000 in request I've received today?
No, it's in relation to cutting the budget to where the gap is not as big next year. It's in relation to not the entities that we support, and we just basically give them what they want. I believe that we should try to, even if it's a 1% cut to some of these outside agencies, 1% is not that much money. But when you add it up across the board to find $2 million or $1 million, I think it just shows the right thing, and we're going to have tough conversations next year. We all know that. And I would much rather have it a little bit easier next year by tightening the bolts up, let's just say, a little bit this year. And, and I just think it's the right thing to do. Even if it means some of these entities that your recommendation is, the 150,000, well, maybe they only get, 135,000 or something. Just like, that's what I'm saying. But I believe that we should try to find $1 million out of this budget to show that, to make, number one, show the people that what we should be doing, fiscal responsibility. We know that there's going to be more revenue coming in next year, too. We had 5% growth this year. We have to find a balanced budget, but that's what makes it look like. It looks like we're just spending more, but more revenue's coming in. So if we're putting more back in the reserves, which we want to do and need to do, I think it's the right thing to do, and it makes it easier on us next year. And that's why I asked the question.
In order to cut $1 million from our general fund $200 million budget, I would strongly request guidance from this body, because as you've seen, I've presented pathways to you in the past that have been received as information, and so it would behoove this body to give some additional direction as to where you would like to see those cuts. Because $1 million from your general fund is a lot. That would require programming, operations, possibly even personnel, because the bulk of your costs are in your personnel line items.
Is the $4 million that you mentioned that you think we're going to have that shortfall, how much is that from the general fund, or is it all from the general fund?
No, all of it is not from the general fund,
okay.
No.
So I guess that kind of opens it up a little bit that maybe it isn't all from the general fund, because I just think that if we're $4 million short and we're sitting here and we know that, and we know we have to fix straight lights, we know we still have to fix the fire issue, however that's going to go, like that $4 million might be even more next year. And if we don't do the right thing now, I just think it creates even tougher conversations.
I will say, while each budget season comes with its own challenges, the plan for FY24 is for us to mitigate them along the way. One being the fire department. As we know, a bulk of our ARP supplements are within the fire department. Hence the reason why I've only been able to account for removing supplements from salaries of full-time employees, not including the fire department. The next matter would be our streetlight deficit. Of course, we are subsidizing our streetlight deficit by ARP, but as proposed in FY24, developing a plan to ensure that our streetlights are able to not only bring in the revenue, but also fund themselves, which is a plan that engineering will bring forward. Another matter to be considered would be the fact that some of our programming currently paid for through ARP are one-time expenses.
And they were supposed to end.
And they will at the end of FY24. But until then, by moving money, by now allocating or removing the subsidy costs, that has increased your ARP funding by an additional $1 million. So let's make certain that that $1.4 million that is now in ARP, that we encumber those funds in FY24 so that that won't be a carryover, because it won't be a carryover. But I do not think FY25 is going to bring about some of the fiscal concerns that you're highlighting today.
Okay.
Not to say that it will not be a challenge.
Thank you.
You good? All right. Last person in the queue, Commissioner from the 5th, you back. Well, we just had some others. Okay. Come on, Commissioner Williams.
No, what we got to realize too, a lot of people in Augusta don't realize this. We don't have a lot of money coming in. We don't raise taxes. We don't charge for parking. We don't charge for other things that other cities charge for. So it seems like we make money based on the homes and, paying your regular taxes or what have you. But I just want to go on record and say this. We're going to have to find a way to make money in Augusta so that we can give out monies to the entities that we need to give money to, so that we can fund our departments the way our departments need to be funded. So I wanted to say that, just put that on your minds that, in the future, I'm not sure Augusta can continue to live off of an overage of $2 million or $3 million and think that we're going to get by that way. We've got the boathouse. We're trying to figure out how we're going to build the boathouse back. We've got the police department that need pods. I've worked in the prison system before, and I know how they can do a facility, and I could imagine how, some people dread going to work because they don't feel safe. So we need to think about these things in the future when we make decisions. How are we going to get money to Augusta? You want your streets paved. You want the police to come when you want them to come. You want the fire department to put water on the fire at your house, on the piece of rib that you burned up in the backyard, or whatever it may be. But in the future, we're going to have to find a way to get money into Augusta. I drive down Broad Street and I see cars parked in the parking spaces, on the curves, and everywhere else. One of the things we may need to look at is paying for parking downtown. They do it everywhere else. So I'll close with this final remark. We're going to have to find a way to bring money into Augusta, Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner from the 5th. Madam Administrator, I just see two parked items for Dr. Malik. Commissioner Frandom had an item. Dr. Malik, hopefully you'll get that question so you'll be prepared for the next budget session. There's another parked item for Director Donna Williams from Commissioner Wayne Guilfoyle. I would ask my colleagues as we move forward, for the sake of time, if there are questions that you need addressed prior to the next session, that you would at least submit them to our clerk of the commission so she can get them to our administrator or directly to the administrator. Maybe the clerk could coordinate them and get them to her because she does a great job of keeping everybody informed. So every question's addressed, and it gives our department heads time to properly prepare for these as we discuss them. I think we owe it to them to be prepared to answer questions.
Update.
Yes, sir.
And it doesn't have anything to do with this. When are we supposed to look at the people with the administrative thing?
I think that's a different matter. Madam Clerk, she just sent out an email about that a couple days ago. I think the 13th and the 20th.
It's just going to be a Zoom thing.
That's in
It's
November.
Yeah.
We start in November.
Okay, my
No.
birthday's in November.
Okay. We'll have a party. Make it a party.
All right. There's no further business, no further colleagues. Madam Clerk, this meeting is hereby closed. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here today. Have a great day and rest of the weekend.
Good job, ladies.